Good evening, community leaders, as you're entering the Zoom meeting. This is the community leaders meeting for October, and you will notice that you see our panelists up on the screen. As you enter the meeting, you will not have video during the main portion of this meeting, but we do invite you to use the raise hand feature during the open comment time at the end of the meeting, and we will call on you and invite you over to ask your questions or make your comments. I want to remind everyone that our open dialogue time, you can ask questions of staff who've presented this evening. You can ask questions of your commissioners, and you can talk about anything that is happening out in the community. This is a time for open dialogue. So again, I want to welcome community leaders to your community leaders meeting. Please find your raise hand feature. It's most likely in the lower portion of your screen. You'll want to know where that is so that you can participate during the open dialogue time near the last portion of the meeting. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share the agenda as people are trickling in so that we all can remember what we're here to talk about tonight. We have a pretty full agenda. It's a little more full than we usually plan for these meetings, but this meeting has been a long time coming with all the events of this fall. So we are grateful for everyone sticking with us as we rescheduled this for a later date. We have quite a few folks here from DTD to talk about planning and transportation. So thank you so much to our DTD staff for coming this evening. And we have all of our commissioners here this evening. Thank you so much for making the time to come. Given the tight schedule, I think we'll just jump in to our meeting. We have an update on the long range planning program from Karen Buehring. I will stop sharing my screen and introduce and welcome Karen to take the lead.
Sure. Well, good evening, everyone. It's excellent to be here tonight. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for a very short presentation. I do know that we are really booked this evening, so we'll just start it off with something light. So tonight I'm here to talk about the long range planning work program. And so actually 2 years ago, came to this meeting just about the same time, right? I was kind of looking at the past files in October of 2018 to talk about the long range planning work program. So we're kicking off the solicitation of input here tonight, and many of you may have received an email from Lorraine Gonzalez earlier this week requesting input into the long range planning work program. You know, we have solicited input. Let's see if I can figure out how to change. Oh, I know, I have to have my cursor over in that screen, I think. Oh, there we go. So on the screen now is, and I'll explain a little bit what we're looking at, because what we're looking at right now is the long range planning work program for, it's the current one that's been approved, and it's for a 2-year period of 2019 to 2021. And so we've been, for the past 8 years, the Planning and Zoning Division has been reaching out to our partners, our community leaders, our departments, our other jurisdictions to gather input into the long range planning work program. We use this as a tool to prioritize and consolidate kind of amendments that are needed to our zoning ordinance as well as our comprehensive plan. So this has allowed for the integration of projects that are important to the community, but also are important because they have been required by either the state or regional actions for us to move forward with. So when we undertook this process in 2018, we actually transitioned to a 2-year work program. Previously, we had been going through this process every year, but one of the things that we really wanted to recognize is the fact that often these projects take more than a year. And so it often felt like we were coming back to the community leaders and others and requesting projects when we haven't hadn't had the time to actually complete the other ones. So we transitioned to a two-year work program, and I think it's working pretty fairly well for us. So on the screen before you is the work program that that's currently underway. And when it was adopted, we made some assumptions and guesses of how long projects would take. And so that would be the gray. One of the things, as you all have experienced, is it's been kind of a very different year. Kind of with COVID coming on, it really has impacted our projects and our ability to kind of complete them within the time frame that we expected. So the red is really where we kind of pushed out in our expectation of being able to complete different projects. But I think even with that, the projects on this list, for the most part, we really are going to be able to complete them within the two-year time frame of the previous work program. And that goes until the end of, or actually the end of the fiscal year in June of 2021. So I think I wanted to highlight a couple of key things that we have been able to accomplish. One of the things that is really neat is to be able to see the projects that have been brought forward by the public and how they have been able to been integrated into some of the projects. And so one thing that some of you may be aware of is that we brought forward a minor amendment package that really was able to kind of package together some of the amendments that we were required to do because of state legislative actions, but are also packaged together some of the kind of the smaller minor changes that were requested by the public. And a couple of those had to do with the hours related to marijuana operations. It also had to do with some small scale manufacturing, bringing in and allowing brew pubs and things like that. So that was one thing that actually has been has gone through the whole process and have been adopted. Another project that we anticipate to, and we hope that is completely finalized by the end of this work program is the Park Avenue Community Project. And so that's project here on the list, E2. That's a project that we've been working with the community on for quite some time, going back to 2017 when we worked with community members to actually get a grant to undertake that project. And we're in the final stages of working with the Community Advisory Committee, with them being scheduled to bring their proposal forward to the board in December. So another project that was brought forward by the community was this interest in really understanding how the application of sidewalks and bike lanes would look in the community of Rhododendron. They had come and talked about the need for that. And so again, that's another one we were able to match some funding for. We were able to get a grant, and we have been working on what's called the Rhododendron Sidewalks. It is a planning project, and that project's currently underway and should be completed by June of 2021. So there's quite a few of these that actually are kind of going to be able to be completed, but we also know that there are some that are going to run longer than we had anticipated. And so one of those is the Housing Strategies Project. That's a project that's currently underway. We implemented a new tool, which is called an issues paper, because there were so many different elements related to that project. And it really allowed us to kind of frame up how we were going to approach that project. We brought that before the board in January of this year. And since that time, we've been moving forward with the first phase of that project, as well as being able to be engaged in the piece of that project related to HB 2001. And that's the code amendments with respect to that piece will really get kicked off. They're a part of phase 2. And we anticipate that work to go into the next work program. Because there's even a phase 3 of that project that's underway. So this is just kind of a starting point for the long range planning work program. But now what we're doing, and you can kind of see at the end of this spreadsheet, are the fiscal years that are highlighted in orange. That'd be fiscal year 21. As well, all the way going to fiscal year ending in June of 2023. And that's the pocket of time that we're looking for input into projects that we should be working on. see if I can figure this out. There we go. So, oh, this is what I just talked about. We, with regards to those things that we were just completed. I think the other thing that I wanted to note that I didn't before is that there are a few of the transportation planning projects that have had to been pushed off, and we anticipate going into the next planning work program. There have been some issues. One of the projects had to do with doing some transportation planning in the area that had been formerly in the city of Damascus. There was some legal issues going on, so we kind of held off on actually doing that work, and that work's just getting underway right now, as well as another transportation planning project. We were kind of working with the city of Canby, and there's been a lot of change with regards to leadership in Canby, so we've been waiting until that we were able to get some stability there, and but right now we're going to move forward with that project. But both of those, which were within this work program, we anticipate kind of going into the next work program. So with that, we're coming to you to let you know that we're starting to collect ideas. This portion of the process where we're collecting ideas from the community leaders, as well as reaching out to other departments and other jurisdictions, that really is opening right now, and we're collecting input up to December 18th. So it's about a 2-month window. We're asking the input be emailed to Lorraine Gonzalez. Again, if you didn't receive an email from her, one of the things that I was thinking about is maybe I'll have Katie be able to send out to her list. Maybe you can do this, Katie, kind of the email that we sent out to the other list that we had, just to make sure that everybody kind of gets this request for input.
Absolutely.
Okay, excellent. And so we anticipate taking that input, and then the process that happens in the early next year is we'll do some work sessions with the board. We'll talk with the planning commission. There'll be an opportunity for people at a planning commission meeting to give input into a draft work program, and then we'll bring it back to the board probably around the March-April timeframe to be able to have them acknowledge and accept that work program for us to move forward with. So with that, that is my, oh, I wanted to touch on one additional thing and just really kind of be able to clarify what is the type of project we're looking for. And I think that's important. So projects that are on the long range planning work program really are those that make changes to the zoning development ordinance or have a relationship with a comprehensive plan. So many times these projects get prioritized at the state level. So there's a lot of things that come into play when we are looking at different projects. So we reach out to the broader community for these, but we are also thinking about what are those projects that the state have made some legislative changes on and are requiring us to do some work. So for example, the kind of the directions that are coming to us through HB 2001 and the rulemaking that's going on. So we take all of that and we look and we put together and we forecast into the future how much time we think might be available, understand what the priorities are at the Planning Commission and at the board, and then be able to put together a package that we think is something that we can complete in that 2-year timeframe. So one of the things we often hear about are capital projects, and capital projects are things like I need a sidewalk built, or I really think there needs to be a bike lane or whatnot. Those type of projects are not included in the long range planning work program. Those type of projects are really more appropriate for our capital work program. Like I said, the long range planning work program really looks for changes to our zoning development ordinance or different types of planning projects. So with that, I'm going to just wrap up my presentation so that we can keep ourselves on schedule, and that I'll be around for questions when we have the question time.
Thank you, Karen. That was great, and you were ahead of schedule, so thank you so much. Our next presentation is about land use housing strategies, and this is Martha.
Hi, thank you, Karen. I might need your extra time. I'm realizing as I look through my PowerPoint. So I will share my screen. Let's start this as a slideshow. There we go. So hi, good evening. I am Martha Fritzie, a principal planner with the county's Planning and Zoning Division. I am the project manager for the Land Use Housing Strategies project that Karen alluded to in her presentation. And I also thought I was asked to give a very brief update on what's going on with House Bill 2001 as well. They tie together. And so the Land Use Housing Strategies project is a big and fairly complicated project. I am going to attempt to give you a pretty broad overview of that and of the rulemaking as well, for a number of reasons. One is we don't have a lot of time, and the other reason is, by and large, the changes that could result from both of these projects are going to mostly affect the urban unincorporated area. And most of them would not affect the rural areas outside of the urban growth boundary. But I will certainly try to identify where it would affect other areas. And so, as we all are aware, I am sure, there is a housing problem. There's a housing crisis. There's a lack of affordable housing, and kind of generally there is a lack of there's not enough housing, particularly in the urban area of Clackamas County. And so back in 2019, the county had a housing needs analysis done, and the Board of County Commissioners also put together a housing affordability and homelessness task force. In 2019, there was also this middle housing legislation that would require us to make changes to our zoning code. And those three pieces really fed a lot of information into the work that we wanted to do in the zoning code related to land use regulations, in order to facilitate and even incentivize more housing, more variety of housing, and more affordable housing, particularly in the urban unincorporated area. There are a lot of recommendations that came out of the housing needs analysis and the task force report. Some of them are being addressed by Health, Housing, and Human Services, because that agency houses the housing authority. They build and manage affordable housing, and they handle a lot of the services for folks in need of rent assistance and other things like that. So what we are focusing on are land use regulations and things that could be changed in our zoning code to support the development of a more affordable variety of housing. And so the issue paper that Karen mentioned is available on our website, and I can email this out after this meeting. I have a link to it at the end of this presentation. It gives a lot of detail about the 12 potential strategies that we identified to consider for making changes to our zoning code. It also includes analysis of those 12 strategies. It puts those 12 strategies into 3 different buckets, 3 different phases, grouped together in a logical manner so we can work through them in smaller, manageable chunks. And we assess the phasing and the grouping based on looking analysis of the regulatory context, whether or not they really would be producing new units, looking at equity consideration and trying to advance some of our equity goals that the county has. And so I'm not going to read all of these 12 housing strategies. You will see that there's 10 housing strategies. One of them is 2 parts. And so some of them are required, House Bill 2001, some of them are optional. And so in January, we presented our issue paper to the Board of County Commissioners, and we presented this grouping and phasing, and we were given marching orders to go forth and start working on this project. The initial timing for each of these phases is outlined here. As Karen mentioned, this may be pushed out a little bit. It was a little difficult to do some of the public engagement, for example, during COVID, and everybody having changing work situations. But we are plugging away, and we are working diligently on phase 1. The approach that we're taking generally is to focus on equity and providing equitable housing options. to work with updating our comprehensive plan to enable all of this, and also to leverage existing projects and information that we are learning from things like the Park Avenue Station Area project that might directly relate to code amendments that we might want to make in a broader context elsewhere in the urban unincorporated area. So as I stated, phase 1 is underway. We are currently looking at these 3 strategies in phase 1, and they primarily relate to multifamily housing, considering increasing or removing maximum density requirements for multifamily developments in certain commercial zoning districts. They're identified there. Those basically are the zoning districts that are along our major corridors like McLaughlin, 82nd. The issue that we are addressing or potentially addressing is that there's a maximum of 25 dwelling units per acre allowed if somebody wanted to build multifamily housing in the commercial zoning districts, whether or not it's standalone or with other commercial development. And we have been hearing from a lot of developers and other folks that just isn't enough to make these kinds of projects pencil financially anymore. And it's important to note that the county does actually have some zoning districts that have a higher maximum allowed, and we do have housing being built at more up to about 50 dwelling units per acre around the Clackamas Town Center and the Fuller Road Station area. And so it's not something that's outside of the realm of reality in the county, certainly. And so we're looking at various options to do what might be appropriate in those zoning districts in order to get more housing actually built on the ground. At the same time, we're also looking at parking standards for multifamily developments. Currently, we have a single parking standard for any multifamily development, regardless of where it's located or what population it's serving. And we have a lot of evidence that suggests that there really is a difference in parking usage and needs based on income levels, proximity to transit, and to some extent age when you're looking at a senior population. And so currently we have one standard and there really is no way through the zoning code to vary from that standard. And we think it's appropriate to make some changes to that, and we're working on what those might look like. And then finally, we're looking at our affordable housing bonus. We currently have an affordable housing bonus in our zoning code, and that basically says if you are willing to provide some affordable units, some units that will maintain affordability to a certain income level, be it 60% of the area median income or lower generally, then you get to build an additional dwelling unit above the maximum that's allowed in your zone, which is intended to incentivize the development of affordable housing, but it's capped at a very low number. And so it's not something that is very effective or are very often used in the county. And we're looking at what might be better ways to structure an affordable housing bonus to incentivize that type of housing to be developed. As I mentioned, these changes would primarily affect areas inside the Portland metropolitan urban growth boundary where multifamily housing is currently allowed. It is possible, if we're looking at changing parking standards and affordable housing bonuses, it may affect some of the, and I put in quotes, urban zones on Mount Hood. Those are the zones up in the Mount Hood communities that have sewer service and allow for multifamily development. If as we are working through this process, if we decide maybe to look up at those mountain zones, we would certainly reach out to the communities up there to identify whether or not the same changes that we would make inside the urban growth boundary would also be appropriate up there. They may or may not be, but that's a conversation that we would have. So we have assembled a working group. Currently it has 16 members and 6 staff from various departments supporting us. The members range from CPO leaders, there's a pastor from the urban area, housing advocates, a representative from the housing authority, I know I'm missing a lot of people, but we tried to find a wide range. We have some developers and architects who work in the county on multifamily housing. We tried to assemble a wide range of perspectives as we work through these issues. And we've had 2 meetings so far to discuss the phase 1 strategies in the urban area. They've been very interesting and productive, and really good conversations. We expect to have 2 more meetings with this group, either later this year, well, at least one might be this year, into early next year. We will be having some work sessions with the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners before we would propose any code amendments for adoption. We would expect, if everything stays on track, that would be happening, sometime early next year. We'd be looking at trying to go into the hearings process. So phase 2 is coming soon. Phase 2 includes House Bill 2001 implementation, allowing duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, cottage clusters, and townhomes in urban single-family residential zones. So these strategies were grouped together because they by and large will involve us looking at our urban single-family residential zones, whereas the other ones really deal primarily with multifamily housing. Phase 2 is going to be a bigger look into the single-family residential zones. It also includes making sure that we have fully implemented Senate Bill 1051 from 2007, which deals with having clear and objective standards for all housing in the urban area. So there will be a little bit of overlap with the multifamily there. And then taking a look at some of our comprehensive plan policies related to zone changes in the single-family residential zones. So we have just recently begun thinking about our outreach efforts for phase 2. We've received a grant from the State Department of Land Conservation and Development to hire some consultants to help us with that outreach, with the intent of really trying to connect with communities that aren't generally involved in planning processes and make sure that we have a better representation of communities of color and other historically underserved communities in the urban area. And so this is where I pivot to House Bill 2001. And I know this is on a lot of people's minds. There are a number of reasons that we are not planning to address our county code amendments related to House Bill 2001 until the second phase of the Housing Strategies Project. One of them is in bold right here at the bottom. Our deadline isn't till June 30th, 2022. That's one of the reasons. The other reason is that there is some rulemaking going on related to this legislation. And so this legislation, sort of in a nutshell, requires the urban unincorporated area of Clackamas County and a number of other jurisdictions to allow a duplex on every lot zoned, to allow every urban lot zone to allow a detached single family home. I've listed the zoning districts there. It may or may not mean anything to you. They are generally our urban low density residential zones. It requires us to allow all the other types of middle housing identified in House Bill 2001 in areas within these zones. And what it does not do, which is pretty significant, given some of the press that this received, is it does not outlaw single family dwellings, and it doesn't change anything about the whether or not accessory dwelling units are allowed. So in all of these zones, detached single family homes are still allowed and accessory dwelling units are still allowed. But we need to add allowances for these other dwelling types. Just very briefly, what is middle housing? House Bill 2001 defines it as duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, townhomes, and cottage clusters. These are all the housing types we are going to be considering in our urban residential zones. Excuse me, single family residential zones. So when the legislature passes their legislation, the rules are written into the statutes. Part of that legislation was directing the State Department of Land Conservation Development to write some rules and to amend the Oregon administrative rules to incorporate these rules to provide the parameters and the more detail about how to implement 2001. There's generally 3 areas of focus in those rules. A model code was required to be developed for the middle housing and minimum compliance. This thing called infrastructure-based time extension requests, which I'm not going to get into in any detail. And then House Bill 2003 was tied into the rulemaking because cities are required to do these things called housing production strategies. Again, I'm not going to get into that because we at the county, an unincorporated area, are not required to do it. There have been, over the last 9 months to a year, a large number of meetings with the Rules Advisory Committee and 3 technical advisory committees that are advising the Rules Advisory Committee. Chris Story, the Assistant Director of WES, was a member of the Rules Advisory Committee, and also the Technical Advisory Committee that dealt with infrastructure issues for obvious reasons. I was an alternate to the Rules Advisory Committee and attended the majority of the meetings. And then I worked on the Technical Advisory Committee for the Model Code. And so a lot of issues came up in the rulemaking, as would be expected. There, of course, the state grapples with flexibility for local jurisdictions in order to implement this in the various jurisdictions that all have different needs. Parking, of course, is always a big issue. There's a push from some folks to reduce the number of off-street parking spaces. The way the rules are currently written is that a jurisdiction could not require, generally speaking, there's of course small exceptions, could not require more than one dwelling unit per more than one off-street parking space per dwelling unit, but you could allow more if a developer came in and proposed it. And then of course is the in areas conversation. As I mentioned, duplexes must be allowed on every lot. But for the other middle housing types, the non-duplex middle housing types, the rules are still grappling a little bit with how you determine which areas a jurisdiction can prohibit or limit these other middle housing types in. And so that conversation is ongoing. At this point, there are a couple of different issues out there, but I will not get into them. There are draft rules out there on DLCD's website for everybody to look at. They are well into their adoption process. This summer, the rules for the smaller cities were adopted, which again wouldn't affect unincorporated Clackamas County. And the infrastructure-based time extension rules were adopted in September. Late September was the first reading and public hearing for the rules for large and metro cities and counties, which are the ones that the county would need to follow. And then November 12th is the second reading, I guess they're hoping is the final reading and public hearing for the rules for the large cities and counties. So that is the second reason why we had pushed our own code amendments, the county's code amendments, to deal with House Bill 2001 back to the second phase, because we knew this rulemaking was going to be going on, and we need this rulemaking to understand the lay of the land and what the parameters are that we have to work within when we are doing our own code amendments. So as I mentioned, this month we will be looking to hire consultants to assist with the community outreach for this second phase of the Housing Strategies Project, and specifically House Bill 2001. Early 2021, we'll begin this outreach and some initial code work for phase 2 and for House Bill 2001. If the county were to submit an infrastructure-based time extension for any areas of the unincorporated urban area, those would be due in June of 2021. And then we would expect to have hearings to consider adopting code amendments to comply with House Bill 2001 and potentially the other strategies identified in phase 2 late 2021 or early 2022, well ahead of the June 2022 deadline. That was a lot. I'm happy to answer any questions. There is a lot more information about the Land Use Housing Strategies project in general and the phase that we are currently working on specifically on our web page that is listed up here, and that can certainly get emailed out after this meeting.
Absolutely. We can include all this information in a follow-up email. Martha, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to explain all of that. Okay, and we are still doing really great on time, so thank you so much to the presenters for being so conscious of our schedule. Our next presentation is the Transit Development Plan, and that's Karen again.
Oops, I keep hitting things, so I turn off my speaker. So new computer, and it's kind of sensitive. So I'm going to try something a little bit different with my slideshow this time. I wonder if I can do it this way.
I just hate to interrupt, Karen, but I think Martha asked if there were any questions. Maybe I misunderstood, and there is a hand up in the attendees.
So we would like to have everyone hold their questions and comments till the end when we do all of our questions and comments at the same time, Commissioner Savas.
Okay.
And I did see you also. I see you also have a comment in chat, and so we will go ahead and take all of those at the same time, and I'll take them in order that they're received too. So we'll make sure everyone gets their questions answered in order.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. All right, so I am here and back to talk about the Transit Development Plan. And one of the things that I was thinking about as Martha was talking is that actually 3 of these projects, that being the Housing Strategies Project, the Transit Development Plan, as well as the next project that Martha is going to talk about, which is short-term rentals, are all examples of projects that were on the long-range planning work program, just to kind of get a view into what the long-range planning work program is about. So the Transit Development Plan, I am always interested to figure out how I move this. Okay. So the Transit Development Plan is a project that we had talked about for quite a few years and was able to receive Transportation Growth Management funding for TGM program funding. It's a program that really is designed to both fund work that's related to transportation systems, but it also funds work related to how transportation and growth and land use interface with each other. And so one of the key things that was important for us here in Clackamas County was to put together a transit development plan. We in the county had never had a transit development plan, and the goal of the transit development plan is to really have something that will guide future investments in transit within Clackamas County. And it came about, one of the key reasons why this became important is that in 2017, there was a House bill, the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund was created. It actually is, I believe, what is called an employee tax that's collected from everyone. And then it is distributed through back to each county, and actually the way that it's distributed, and I certainly won't go into this, Commissioner Savas is very familiar with this, it's distributed back to the different transit organizations based on different projects that they may have in a plan. And so we needed to have plans with some projects in it to cover areas that hadn't previously been in transit districts. So in our project, we really have 2 primary study areas. We're really looking closely at an area within the TriMet area to understand how we can really better provide input into TriMet, into their service enhancement plans. So that will help provide guidance as TriMet is putting together their future plans for their future STIP plans. But this project also, the second study area is how can we better connect those transit districts and transit providers that are out in our rural area, connect them to each other, as well as connect them to the TriMet area. So there's really kind of two things going on. This project has been underway since the beginning of the year. It really started right about January, February, and fortunately, some of the first steps was about doing some existing conditions work, gathering of information. And so when it was kicked off, we were able to kind of take that time of transition that went on in March and April and use that for some internal work. But since that point, we've been working with both a technical advisory committee and a project advisory committee to work through the steps of the process. We have completed a needs analysis, and currently we're in this place where we're analyzing future service opportunities, as well as evaluating those and starting to create some priority identification of projects. I want to touch on the fact that transit in Clackamas County is really unique. It's something that I try to bring up every time I talk about this, because I don't think people always understand that we have quite a few transit providers. We actually have 7 different transit providers here in Clackamas County. So in addition to TriMet, there's Wilsonville, who provides service through SMART. There's the South Clackamas Transportation District, which serves Molalla and connects both to the Clackamas Community College as well as Canby. There's also Sandy Area Transit. There is the service that's provided from Sandy up to Timberline called the Mount Hood Express. And there's also service that's provided by Clackamas Community College that connects both their campus in Oregon City to their campus on Harmony, and then the end of the light rail line. So there's all these different providers that are working together to provide transit here in Clackamas County. We have a website that talks about our transit development plan. And one of the key reasons why we wanted to come and share this with you tonight is we have one of our final surveys that are open. It's open through October 25th, which is the end of the week. We've been pushing this out. I think I've come probably to some of your groups to talk and share about this project. So some of this might be familiar to some of you. So as I just talked about, we have 7 different providers. In Clackamas County, there's actually 46 different fixed route buses, but we also have shuttles that provide service. We have light rail, and there's the commuter rail line that goes into Wilsonville. So there's also infrastructure that supports that and supports our transit, which are the park and ride facilities. We also have other types of transportation services, such as the paratransit services and nonprofit demand response services. So those things are services that are provided to often directly to elderly and persons with disabilities, and are often provided either through ride connection or transportation reaching people. So there's lots of different ways that people get around. Here's a map of the existing transit lines in Clackamas County. So you can see that it is fairly extensive as it reaches throughout all of the different county, but the network isn't very dense. That means that they're not, while the lines extend out, there's not as much connectivity as we might want. So the first thing that we did was we identified the needs. We looked at where we wanted to find out where there was new transit corridors and areas that didn't have service. We also wanted to understand what areas that had existing service needed to have more service. Where was there already more demand? Where might they need to be additional service added onto different lines? So from that, some of the key things that we found is that there are new connections that need to be made, there's new local service that needs to be made, and then there's additional transit that really needs to be focused on. So as you can see here, they're kind of grouped in different categories. But really the new connections are places that don't have service at all. So for example, along Highway 212 through Damascus and Boring, being able to connect there's an acronym there, which is C2C. We call that the Clackamas to Columbia corridor to Gresham, but that is the corridor of 172nd that would then go up to 190th. And be able to connect the jobs that exist in the Clackamas industrial area to people who live there in Gresham and have a more direct connection. So other things such as local service, the new connection is a kind of connecting these two different areas that are maybe located far away from each other, but new local services is how do you get around your community? And so there were new local services that were needed. And then just additional service as well. And that's when we're adding more bus runs to existing lines. So here's a kind of just a broad overview of where those kind of new connections are needed. The blue and the green lines were connections that hadn't been identified on maps in the past. With the orange lines, kind of with the arrows, they were connections that had been identified in previous plans, but needed to be moved forward and considered as we were looking at priorities. I think this map is just one that's zoomed into the urban area, so you can get a better idea of where we were looking to be able to have some new connections and new service. So here's a list, kind of the same things that I had just talked about, grouped in those categories, but really getting into a little bit more detail of what potential service there might be and who might be a good alternative for a provider for that service. So overall, general service enhancements, when we're talking about more service, this includes not just expanding, so adding earlier or later service. It could also mean increasing frequency. We're looking at different options, such as what we often refer to as bus on shoulder operations in congested corridors or along freeways. How can we actually support transit in those areas? Other things that are really important is improving coordination between the agencies, as well as the way that they connect to each other to improve the experience for the rider. Coming out of that is right now we're in the phase of the future solution strategies. So we analyzed all of the information about the needs, and then we looked at the travel demand on these regional corridors and the commute and the population and employment densities to start to develop draft priorities. So looking at this, and this is really, this is where we're starting, and when you reach out and if you have the opportunity to take the survey, we start to get information from different people about what are their priorities and what routes make the most sense in their local area. So right now, some of the things that have come to the top really are looking at those connections in that area between Oregon City and I-5 in the I-205 area, making sure that there are investments in the Clackamas industrial area, some areas in Oregon City. But these are ideas that are kind of bubbling up to the top. So other things with regards to the transit supportive improvements, really where are those transit centers and major stops that need improvements? What type of services and infrastructure are needed at bus stops? But another key thing that is talked about is that partnering with the new transit service also needs to be adequate pedestrian facilities. So for example, there are a few new lines that are on maps on the TriNet service enhancement plan where they would like to provide new service, but there's limited sidewalks and there's a lot of concern about how do we get people to the bus stops. So being able to partner pedestrian improvements with our transit improvements will be important. A couple of other things that are strategies that probably will be included is really looking at what land use and code strategies there might be to support transit. But then also information and technology, as you all might be aware, is very important to how we get around and what kind of things and investments need to happen here in Clackamas County and with the transit providers to really make that experience for the rider even better as they're needing to transfer, understand when their bus is going to arrive, how they can pay when they're using different systems. So the next steps for this is that, like I said, we're doing our final round of input through a survey. We're going to review the public feedback. We'll continue to look at the different service options with the project advisory committee we have. We'll revise those preferred opportunities based on this input, and then a draft transit development plan. The transit development plan will be drafted, and then we'll reconnect with the transit advisory committee and bring that forward to the project advisory committee to help finalize what that transit development plan is. So we're looking forward to your feedback. Again, maybe this is another thing that I can bundle with information that I send to Katie about. It's just kind of a quick link that they can participate in this survey, and it's open through the end of the week. So, and then Brett Setterfield actually is the project coordinator on this. He's out at a different meeting this evening, but he's our project contact. So with that, oops. That's my presentation on the transit development plan.
Thank you, Karen. That was great. I really appreciate that. So again, if you have questions, we will go ahead and take those questions during the open comment period after these sessions, after our sharing sessions are over. Over. Our next update is about the Community Road Fund, and I believe that's Martha again.
Nope, that's me.
Oh no, I'm sorry. We have short-term rentals. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself.
You want to do that one?
Okay. I'm going to rely on your expertise for that one. Thank you.
Martha, sorry about that. Short-term rentals.
That's quite all right. I have another presentation for you all. Let's start this one. Come on. There we go. All right. Proposed regulations for short-term rentals. This is Martha Fritzie again. Okay. Well, let's start with what are we talking about? What is a short-term rental? A vacation rental, short-term rental is a dwelling unit or a portion of a dwelling unit that is rented to any person or entity for a period of up to 30 consecutive nights. We are talking about things that you often these days see advertised on Airbnb or VRBO or some of those other platforms. It is not a long-term rental where somebody lives. It is a short-term rental for vacation purposes for a short period of time. And so why are we even talking about this? Well, there's a couple of reasons why we're talking about this right now and why we're all thinking about this. First of all, our zoning and development ordinance does not explicitly allow for short-term rentals. It's actually silent on the use of a short-term rental on a home. And so from a zoning perspective, short-term rentals are considered a prohibited use of a dwelling. But regardless, we know that there are hundreds of short-term rentals in the county. There are some particularly up in the resort areas in Mount Hood that have been operating for decades. So the advent of these new online platforms has certainly made that this type of use grow and move to other areas of the county, and there's more interest in starting these up. There also have been several short-term rental properties that have generated a lot of complaints in the county, and it's made it very clear to us that there are definitely, there can be impacts to neighborhoods. Whoa, I skipped that, sorry about that. There can be impacts to neighborhoods. We also know there are a lot of them that are operating very well and are compatible with their neighborhoods. And then finally, the third reason is that many short-term rental owners are not paying the required transient room tax or transient lodging tax. That is the tax that hotels, motels, anyone running a lodging facility has to pay and in creating a short-term rental program with regulations and tying it directly to being registered and paying your tax, it can hopefully work to start leveling the playing field amongst all sorts of lodging establishments. And so we have done a lot of work to date. I was thinking about this earlier, and I think it was close to 2 years ago that we started this project. The Board of County Commissioners asked planning to look into short-term rentals, potentially allowing and regulating them. And so we started with doing a lot of research. We're not the first jurisdiction to go down this road, certainly. We focused on lessons that other cities and counties, and particularly those in Oregon, had learned, so we could start maybe with a little leg up. We held an internal stakeholders meeting with various representatives from various departments within the county who may be affected or may actually ultimately be implementing a short-term rental program. We held a pretty extensive public outreach effort with 8 large community meetings in the spring and summer, early summer of 2019. There's been a lot of social media and press releases. We have a website up. There have been at least 2 surveys that we've put out there. We've held 9 policy sessions with the Board of County Commissioners to discuss these issues, 1 work session with the Planning Commission, and back in early 2020, we had 2 public hearings before the Board of County Commissioners to consider potential regulations before the project was put on hold in the spring of 2020 due to the pandemic and differing priorities that arose because of that. And so in September, the board identified short-term rentals as one of their priorities to get finished before the end of the year. And we went back to them in October and talked to them about how we might get that done between now and the end of the year. And we can talk about that timing in just a minute. But what are we talking about in terms of regulations? So what is a short-term rental program? Well, it is a registration program that includes a fee, a registration fee, and some regulations that a potential short-term rental operator would need to comply with. The program as it's drafted would allow a short-term rental in any legal permanent dwelling in unincorporated Clackamas County. That would include a legal guest house associated with that home or an accessory dwelling unit. There are, of course, some exceptions. If, for example, if a dwelling was approved for only for a specific use, for example, for a farm worker, that wouldn't be allowed to be used as a short-term rental, but generally speaking, they would be allowed in a legal dwelling. However, if the dwelling or guest house being proposed for use as a short-term rental is within the Portland metropolitan urban growth boundary, the short-term rental must be the primary residence or on the same property or tract as the primary residence of the owner. And then each short-term rental operator must register, pay a registration fee, and demonstrate that they can and will continue to comply with all of the regulations. And enforcement, if there's not compliance with some of the regulations, enforcement would be done in a combination of our code enforcement staff and the sheriff's office would continue to enforce on things they enforce on now, which is the noise ordinance, illegal activity, things like that. The short-term rental regulations do not propose to change anything about the noise ordinance or regulations that the sheriff's department enforces on. Some specific requirements as they are drafted: there is a maximum overnight occupancy, 2 people per bedroom or sleeping area plus 4 extra. That means, for example, if you have a 2-bedroom house, that's 4 people, plus you get 4 extra. So your maximum occupancy, overnight occupancy, would be 8 people. In no case, even if you have a 6 or 7 or 8 bedroom home that you're proposing to rent on a short-term basis, would you be allowed more than 15. There are requirements for off-street parking. There are requirements for what I call building life fire safety regulations. That would be verified through a self-inspection form. The county is not going to be coming out and inspecting the property. Applicants would not be required to pay for an inspection, but they would be required to submit this self-inspection form identifying that they have all of the the necessary features. The regulations require that a notice be posted inside the short-term rental and also mailed to neighbors. And that notice needs to contain a 24-hour contact information if there's emergencies. The notice posted inside would contain other pertinent information, including posted quiet hours and the fact that renters would need to comply with the noise ordinance. And there are a number of other regulations and requirements for submitting an application. One of them being that you have to register to pay. You have to demonstrate you're registered to pay the transient lodging taxes. There's provision about making sure there's garbage removal and appropriate insurance. So the adoption process that we are embarking on to get this project finished by the end of the year is a little complicated, but I will do my best to explain it. The structure of the amendments is listed up here. There's really two pieces to this. So Chapter 8 of the County Code would potentially be getting a new section, Section 8.10, and that section would contain the short-term rental registration program. It would contain all the rules and regulations specific to short-term rentals. It would contain the application processes and requirements, enforcement processes, and certain actions. That all would be adopted into the county code. There is a draft of that available on the website that I'll put up on the screen at the end of this presentation. Then zoning code amendments need to take place if the short-term rental registration program is adopted. These are essentially some enabling amendments to eliminate the conflicts with any conflicts with the county code and the zoning ordinance. And like I said, it really is to make clear that short-term rentals are specifically allowed. Those amendments, as drafted, are pretty minimal. They would be amendments to Section 202, which is our definitions, and specifically to the definition of dwelling unit to make it clear that it could be used as a short-term rental. Excuse me. And then some amendments to Section 833, which talks about guest houses. That is the structure of the amendments. This is the timing of our hearings. For the county code amendments, it requires first and second reading by the Board of County Commissioners. The first reading is scheduled for November 5th. The second reading for November 19th. Both of those would be at the regularly scheduled business meeting, which starts at 10 a.m. Those would be public hearings, and there would be opportunities for public input. Then after those hearings, we have scheduled times for the zoning code amendments. If the board adopts the changes to the county code to adopt the short-term rental registration program, then we will proceed with the zoning code amendments. If the board decides not to adopt those, we will ask them the question about whether or not they would like to proceed with the zoning code amendments, and just simply clarify that short-term rentals are allowed, but not have a registration program. Assuming we are moving forward with the zoning code amendments, the first hearing in front of the Planning Commission would be Monday, November 23rd at 6:30 p.m. The second hearing would be in front of the board on December 9th at 9:30 a.m. with the ultimately the adoption of the zoning code amendments on Thursday, December 17th. And so I know that this is a lot and it's kind of fast, but this, there is a website up that has a lot of information about the process, about all the various drafts that we've gone through, all the various public outreach efforts that have happened, all of the various policy sessions that have happened, and a whole lot more detail about the actual regulations. It is found here. I think I will stop there.
Great. And again, we can provide all this information. I know that was a lot of dates for everyone, and we'll make sure to give this in a follow-up email to everyone. Thank you so much, Martha. And now it actually is Mike Besner's turn.
Are you sure?
We'll go with you this time. Thanks, Mike.
All right, everybody. Well, I'm here to talk about the Community Road Fund, which is the county's local vehicle registration fee. Obviously, transportation funding has been very interesting along with everything else in 2020. People aren't driving as much. It's come back a little bit, and our Community Road Fund definitely got up to a slow start when the DMVs all shut their doors and people actually couldn't get their cars checked for emissions and couldn't pay for their registration. So collections are a little off for the year. We're assuming about a 25% under collection. I don't know if that'll prove to be the case, because what we saw is for most of 2020, we got less than what we were expecting. And then last month, it kicked up to be more than actually what an average month would be. And we think it's people catching up, and because they've had basically a free few months to get their car registered if it was due. We think it might catch up a lot of it, but right now we're being a little tentative and assuming about a 25% reduction. I want to show you what we're doing with it. Okay. So we're doing a few different things with it. There's a local road paving component, which is about $1 million a year. And so here's some examples of the paving packages. A couple of them are already done. We already did Caris Road. We already did Ferguson Road this summer. So we've already spent some community road fund. We were able to jump on that. There's a few packages ready to go for next summer. The Arista area and the Thiessen area package. It's not Thiessen itself, but some local roads around it. We're working on those to get them ready for next summer. This one called the Webster area package. It shows next summer where it might not make it. We have to do a bunch of ADA improvements, and those take some time. So what we might do is do the ADA improvements next construction season, and then do the paving the following season. But we're still working on that. And these two here are slated for 2022, the Boyer King Road area package, and then the McLaughlin neighborhood package. Those are our local roads. Now, if we keep under collecting, some things might get pushed out. And so it's just really too early to tell. But those are the local roads, local road paving, about $1 million a year. And you'll notice these are averaging more than $1 million a year. The reason is we're front loading some of the local road paving because the capital congestion relief projects take a few years to get ready. And so what'll happen is we'll spend a little less on local road paving in the outgoing years, but we figure the money's coming in, we're gonna get these roads paved. It's definitely better for them. Okay, so there's a safety component, about $500,000 a year for safety. The bulk of a bunch of these projects have already been done. Now, they're not incredibly noticeable projects, but they're still important. A lot of them are signal changes. A lot of them we're putting reflective reflective back plates on signals so they're more visible, stuff like that. It's a lot of little things at intersections, but we've already done the ones that say 2020 to 2021, I believe, are all complete. And the others are slated for the next couple of years. And then we're going to have some money in the outer years to do some really good stuff. We haven't programmed it all yet. The congestion relief portion, a little more exciting for some people. So I want to be stressed. You see here, this is the community road fund portion of the total cost. There are these projects, some of them cost more. Some of them cost a lot more. One example here is the Stafford Road, and this is actually the Stafford Childs project. We're going to use a lot of system development charges and use the community road fund as leverage for it. So it's actually about a $10 million project, but this is the portion that the community road fund will fund. And so on average, we're expecting to have about 3.5 million a year for congestion relief projects. So like I mentioned, these take a few years to get going. And so we'll be spending a lot less than that in the current years, but more than that a few years out when the projects are ready. I do want to say we're moving on them. We already have consultants for almost all of these. Apologize for that computer alarm. The Childs Road, we have a consultant on board. Redland Road turn lanes, we've hired a consultant. Canby Markham at Lone Elder, we have a consultant. This Barlow Road at Highway 99 intersection study, originally that was that had more community road fund in it. We're actually combining that with a different study on Arndt Road in general that we're going to work with Canby on. And so this one says 21-22, and I believe that still might be the case because we're combining with the other study. And it really, obviously, we're not building anything for 100,000, but we're going to look at, hey, what are possible solutions? And that was we had a community road fund advisory committee that the board appointed to work with us, and they helped pick these projects and help prioritize them with us. And that was one actually that they specifically added. The Amasiger at 224 was another one that they flagged that as staff, we didn't necessarily have at the top, but they said, hey, this is really important. And so those are the congestion relief projects. And then the last piece of it is this strategic investment fund. And so, by law, if a county has their own vehicle registration fee, we split the money with our cities. The county gets 60% and the cities split 40%. And our cities are getting their allotments right now. They split it by, I believe, by population. Ignore the whimpering dog next to me, please. More distractions in 2020. So the 10%, so the county 60%, 50% is going to the things we just talked about. 10% is going into this fund called the Strategic Investment Fund. These are projects of mutual interest with our cities. And they're not located within cities, but they're really close to them or abutting up to them for the most part. And so, 362nd is Sandy, Bear Creek Bridge. That's a bridge with a bit of a flooding issue. That's Malala, obviously. Borland is coming out of Tualatin to the Rolling Hills Church area. Deuce Eagle Creek is Estacada. And then West Lynn, I'll explain that in a minute. So you'll notice there's only a few cities there. The rest, we have planned jurisdictional transfers. And those are spread out over a bunch of years. The first set, we're talking to Canby right now. That's what those are. And basically, it's county roads that are within cities, within city limits, and it's some money to help affect the transfer so that the city will have to maintain it in perpetuity. The reason West Lynn is on here as project to be determined is we spent a lot of time working with our cities to come up with these projects and jurisdictional transfer ideas. And with West Lynn, we just didn't have a good project, and they've already taken all the roads. So there are no county roads within the city of West Lynn. So we can't do a jurisdictional transfer. So they agreed, and we agreed that it's at the far end of the spectrum here, year-wise, but we'll come up with something to partner with West Lynn on. So that's our plan. As I mentioned, some of these are going to get pushed back. I think I'm not 100% sure which ones yet. We have a pretty massive spreadsheet that we analyze all this with, but it's very dynamic. ODOT's about to come out with another forecast, I think, any day now regarding road funding, and we're going to use that and make changes if we have to. So that's what I've got, and people have questions when we're ready, I'm happy to answer them.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike. So that does bring us to our open dialogue portion of our meeting. And so I want to welcome everyone to use the raise your hand feature to ask your questions. There, you should be able to find that button at the bottom of your screen. It may be at the top if you're using some Apple products. But if you just go ahead and raise your hand, then I will invite you to ask your question. The first comment that came in this evening was actually from Commissioner Savas, and it was related to the housing and the housing strategies update, Martha. And Commissioner Savas's question was, he said, I appreciate the work and presentation staff is providing. One statement I heard tonight is that we do not have enough housing. I realize a shortage in housing. However, Clackamas County has had a jobs housing imbalance for decades. As we add more housing that is essentially poised to compete with land needed for job creation and recognize the limited land inside the UGB, what are we doing in terms of long-range planning to add the jobs needed? Otherwise, we are economically forcing more county residents to commute outside of the county for employment.
So I actually don't mind kind of jumping in on this question, if you don't mind, Martha. Just because it's, you know, it's sort of, it's housing related, but it's also jobs related. And I guess I would point to several different things. And as we probably all know, our Business and Community Services Department really focuses on the near term kind of access for businesses, attracting businesses here, thinking about kind of the long term with regards to both retention and recruitment when it comes to industrial businesses, and they're really expanding out the work that they're doing for the service-based industry. So that's one thing to think about as we're thinking about jobs. But I think a couple of other things that come to mind, and another planning project that we've been working on and we just didn't have enough time to share about here actually has to do with the Park Avenue area, where we are thinking about, well, how is it that we can create opportunities for different types of jobs that perhaps weren't allowed within some of our commercial districts. And so we've been thinking about that. I think the addition of, in the last round of the long range planning work program, of some of the small scale manufacturing into these commercial areas. So that's a way to think about different jobs. And then I think another thing that we have been doing just in the broader picture, we've been really thinking about access and how do we provide better access. That's both through transit, right? Through our transit development planning, some of the work that we've been doing on the Sunrise Corridor that provides access to the industrial area. So how is that, how are we able to do that? I think the final thing is our work with our partners and our cities. Those are the areas that may have kind of new land that's within the urban, kind of coming in from the urban reserves. They're doing some new planning, and how can that land be used for jobs? So how do we efficiently use the land that we have for jobs, but then support those new areas that might be available to have jobs? Those are just kind of some thoughts I had regarding planning for jobs.
Thank you. Our next question comes from B. Ormsby, and I think this might be Skip, but I'm not sure.
Am I available on audio?
We hear you.
Okay. This will probably be my last meeting as a CPO chair. I'm moving out of the Birds Hill area shortly, within about 7-10 weeks. My concerns with all this HB 20.1, et cetera, I think it's just being rammed down our throats. But on transportation, I went to both meetings of the LCDC back in January and Clackamas has got some real problems with accessibility. I'd almost say I got seasick on the bus from Milwaukee east to the Harmony Road campus of CCC. And I have no idea how you're going to get transit buses through there. And you've got enough problems in Lake Oswego with State Street and Highway 43. But my main issue is that we in Clackamas County and the neighborhoods need decent maps, not only in Clackamas County, but frankly, to the southwest to Salem. And our state representatives, frankly, and our leaders and Chamber of Commerce people, they don't ride transit. They have no bluntly idea of what the difference is between accessibility to a structure once you're on the curb or in the loading zone, let alone the difference. And the key one is mobility between points of accessibility. There's no lingo for it. And for example, getting a TriMet, dispatching you can get it from my mother's house here. You can get to the Development Services Building at 150 Beaver Creek Road. God help you if you're trying to get picked up, because it's trying to instruct somebody who doesn't get south of the county line from Multnomah County, driving a cab or something like this. They don't know where stuff is in Clackamas County. And that's a huge problem. So people need to simulate these trips and then actually do them. And the other huge problem I'm experiencing here in Lake Oswego is they want to put dense housing below flood elevation, specifically foothills. If you're unawares, I've referred to my segment of the Willamette River as a trough. I just found out on Monday that the condition of the Oswego Lake Dam is rated by the Oregon Water Resources Department as significant hazard. And you're putting an additional 2,000 people proposed below 1.5 miles below that dam. That's just stupid. I cannot understate, frankly, my disdain for the leaders who are developing these rules and whatnot, and they're taking away local control. You know, go live in foothills right today. You can't get out of there once shaking starts in a 9.0 Cascadia subduction zone rupture. You can't get to an area below above 80 feet, which is the minimal safety level. So we've got real serious problems in nomenclature, in maps. And if you don't know about Google Map Plus codes, I'd start using them. I put out some things to Drenda Howitt. We need maps. We need a whole bunch of stuff. If I can sit down with somebody, maybe get them started, I'd be most appreciative. But the nomenclature and stuff for maps, for travel times, and get me a judge that lives in Lake Oswego commuting to the Red Soils campus. Then they might start understanding it. I doubt if they can, frankly.
Thanks, Skip.
How do I get somebody to make these trips, especially in this realm of COVID-19 CCP Wuhan? Because it's 2,000 people is not an idle number to mortgage a new sewer plant, and it's bad, getting worse.
Thank you, Skip, for your comments. The next question is from Mike Rubb.
Hi, Katie, and hi, everybody. So I serve on the Hamlin Malino board, and we've heard a lot about the commitments that the county's made to the urban areas. We're rural, and we're stuck in between Oregon City and Molalla. And with the growth in Molalla and the search for more affordable housing and the growth that Molalla has seen, we're caught in the middle dealing with incredibly heavy traffic on 213. I would like to know, for the residents of our hamlet, is there any plan near term in reviewing signals and just traffic flows on 213? Because I just dealt with it today, trying to turn off of Canby Markham onto 213, and it was 20 minutes before I could turn, and it is just getting worse. So I'd be curious to hear if there are any studies planned and looking at the growth that we're seeing south of Malino in the South County in Molalla, and traffic flows.
So I think Mike and I, want to tag team on an answer on this.
Go ahead, Karen.
Okay, so I guess I would jump in. So one of the things that kind of the group that I work with does is our transportation system plan. And I agree with you. You know, Malino is really in a challenging spot. You're located, you know, right between kind of two urbanizing areas and along a state highway. But through the transportation system plan, which actually was done 2013, it's something that we might be looking at updating in the upcoming years. But really, how is it that, what are the right projects that are needed? So what I would need to do is actually look at that transportation system plan. I can get back to you to really speak about what projects might be there, but there isn't anything that I'm aware of that is directly in the Malino area that's upcoming in the next year or two. There might be, I don't know what you might be able to add, Mike, but I'll leave it with that.
Yeah, the thing I was going to say is we really need to talk to ODOT, because even in our transportation system plan, we have isolated things on the state system, but for the most part, you know, it's ODOT's. We don't have any control over it, and they have their own plans. I know that they're looking to do a roundabout down on Tolliver on 213, and I know that's one that's, I believe, funded. But we'd have to talk to them, and I'm happy to get back to you and have that conversation and see what is ODOT's plans for it. The other one I'm aware of is up in Oregon City, because Oregon City's doing the planning work, at least, is 213 Beaver Creek and to a lesser extent the 213 Redland Signal. So now, Mike, you had said Canby Markham, but I think you meant maybe a different road. What's the road you were having a hard time turning off of?
Yeah, it was Maxburg Road.
Okay, thank you. I'll look into that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an issue for I mean, it's growing, you know, as we're seeing more traffic coming out, you know, and not out of COVID, but Maxburg Road, Malino Road, turning onto 213, and at Union Mills. You know, Union Mills, you just spent, or ODOT spent, you know, I don't know what they spent, but redoing Union Mills in 213, and quite frankly, it really hasn't done anything. Okay. And so those three, you know, Maxburg, Union Mills, and Malino Road are really the three key. Well, Maxburg technically isn't in Malino, the hamlet of Malino, but it's just south of us. But
it's okay, it's in the county.
Yeah, we all deal, you know, with all three of those, and there are periods where, you know, there's 20 cars in line waiting to turn.
That's good to know. Okay, we'll look into that. We'll talk to ODOT and check it out. I'll get back to you.
Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Okay, our next question is from Tammy Stevens.
You're on mute.
Tammy, can you, I just sent you there you go.
Oh, there we go. I'm muted. I'm muted.
We can hear you now.
Right, thank you. First of all, I just really want to thank Katie, Public and Government Affairs in the county for keeping us all connected during the COVID. This being able to Zoom and keep connected to our community has been just a gift. So thank you all very much. I don't really have any questions for Karen, Martha, or Mike, but I do want to thank you for your thorough presentations, just your dedication to those projects. One of the things I did want to do was reach out to the various CPOs because we have over a third of our CPOs that are inactive. And I don't know about you, but I find this kind of resource amazingly valuable, just to learn what's going on, to be able to provide input. And there's just over a third of this county that doesn't get this resource. I've actually had a conversation with Commissioner Hoverson about, in the next couple years, making it a huge goal to work with Katie, Public and Government Affairs, CCI, to diligently work to get these CPOs active. I think we are lacking a resource that is just so valuable as far as input and participation, representing our citizens. Big deal. And I really want to be a part of that. Wanted to, since we're all here from CPOs and stuff, want to just reach out and let you know that hopefully Ken will be working with, yay, all of us to make that happen. I think that was part of it. The other thing is I do think there was actually a light schedule. It was first on the transportation system plan for the county in Malino. And that was sad. It was voted out and didn't happen. I hope that that does in fact happen. The turn lane there on Union Mills has helped a lot, where you can pull off of Union Mills onto 213 and kind of sit in the middle lane to get out. That has helped a bit, but I agree that more work needs to be done there, Maxburg, as well as obviously Malino. And thank you. Those were my comments.
Thanks, Tammy.
You're welcome.
Tammy, you should know that your ears must have been burning last night, because CCI was also talking about the inactive CPOs and planning for that. So it's really timely that you made that comment tonight. I'd love to chat with you more about that.
Oh, and I'd love to come visit with the CCI. Maybe I
Please
could be
do.
invited to the next meeting. That'd be great.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Are there more questions? If you have a question or a comment, we'd love to have you raise your hand. All right. So the next question is from Skip. Skip, but you got muted again. Are you there? There you are. Nope. Skip, you're on mute. We should be able to hear you now. Are you there? Oh, it looks like maybe he's having some audio problems. Well, while we're waiting for Skip, we'll move on to Grover.
Hi there.
Hi.
So again, I'd like to echo what has been said already. I appreciate these very informative and I'll just leave it informative because they were well done and I appreciate that. I did have a question for some of the things that Karen talked about, and that was specifically, you'd mentioned Jennings Lodge, Oak Grove, and you didn't, but the graph did, or the chart did, about new transit in the new transit section. And I have no clue what that means. You know, we had the three groups where there isn't service, and then new, and that was listed there, but no comment. And we're a little 40,000 population area, and like to know what's going on.
Right. So one of the things that has been had been identified even as a policy within our transportation system plan was the fact that there was a need for more east-west connection.
Absolutely.
And that really needed to be kind of a stronger. So that's the need, is that east-west connection. Currently on TriMet Service Enhancement Plan, there is a new line that's planned that would go along Jennings and connect actually over to the industrial area. But that really still leaves the northern portion to be able to connect better, perhaps over Thiessen onto the Clackamas Town Center, talking about that. But then the other question becomes really, what is the best service model? Is it a fixed route, larger bus? Or is it appropriate to provide kind of connections and services by a smaller bus model, something that would be more like a shuttle? So those are the type of things that are currently being talked about. right now. And so I'd suggest that you take the survey and provide some input.
Okay, great. It's like in traveling in Mexico and other places, they have connects, I forget what they're called, connections or whatever. They're small, they're 14 passenger vans, and they run all over the place and tie you into things, because where we live, you're either up and down a steep hill or down a steep hill to get to anything. And I'm getting up in the age and I can still do it, but a lot of people can't. The last thing I wanted to do is, are you any way to tie this into how we would be affected by that Metro grant? Because it is so unclear how the Metro, not grant, the Metro bond, how that affects this area, because it isn't clear. It changed and it changed, and it's left with not much information in it. We've been reading.
Grover, why don't we get back to you if it passes? We don't want to get too big into this, and we'll see if it passes.
Okay, I think having more information is not up to you guys to have done that, but would have helped it pass one way or the other, because it is so incredibly vague. And then the last thing I want to do is I want to thank the BCC for extending the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District Advisory Board to November 13th, so we can get that finished. So thank you for cooperating in that and making it work.
Thanks, Grover. Our next question is from Marge Stewart.
Yeah, just a quickie to Mike. Is there a plan for a future road fund advisory committee meeting?
Yeah, there is actually. Ellen was just talking with Bill. So yeah, by the way, I should say that Marge and Bill Merchant were both on the Community Road Community Road Fund Advisory Committee. And so, yes, Ellen, do you remember you and Bill were talking about, I think you were going to have one in November. Does that sound right?
We talked about November, and then Bill suggested maybe January. So I think the next step was to kind of poll the group and see what the wish is.
Okay, I just didn't want to think I forgot about it. Okay.
No, it's not. It's not you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's us.
Next time.
It's me, not you.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Thanks, Marge. The next question is from Tammy Stevens.
I just forgot one thing. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hey, I just saw that Jennifer Hughes was on. So one of the things I did forget, hi, Jennifer. Yes, of course, can't leave you alone, was that I had also pestered Katie and possibly CCI with having land use applications that are applicable in inactive CPOs, maybe going to active CPOs, neighboring, so that maybe somebody next door could be at least giving input or taking questions, and mostly taking questions. I mean, for Beaver Creek, that's a big deal. I get tons of questions every time we have a land use application. And what does this mean to me? Or, can I come talk about it or whatever? And those opportunities are not getting utilized. So that was just something I wanted to throw out there, because if that actually gets initiated, CPOs out there may be going, why am I getting a land use application for my neighboring CPO that's not even active? So just want to throw that out. And I'm really dying to know the black and white animal that's eating Ellen's neck.
The fur coat. What is that?
What is it?
That animal is a cat named
It is a
August.
cat.
It is a cat. It's not a rabbit.
It looks like a rabbit, but it's very needy. Why is it so needy?
Well, if you've been dealing with a pandemic for the last 8 months, you'd be needy too.
He has.
You're killing me. Thank you, Katie.
Tammy, Jennifer and I have been in contact about your questions about sending notifications to neighboring CPOs, and we did take it to CCI last night. So we'll be circling back with Jennifer to share CCI's views, and then bringing that. I think we need some more discussion at CCI, and then maybe circle back to you and the community about that.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you very, very much. I just hope that's doable. Thank you.
And Tammy, in the short term, we are going to be notifying Beaver Creek about things in Karis because you had made that specific request. So that should be happening. And then the more sort of global look is a little more involved because we have to figure out, well, which CP, for each inactive one, which one are we going to notify? Because we don't want to be trying to notify 3 and 4 different. So it's sort of a geography exercise.
Oh, but the mere fact that you're considering this is over the top. I mean, seriously, thank you so much. This, I think, means a lot to a lot of people.
Great.
Glad to hear it.
Yay.
Thanks, Tammy. James Tapp.
Hello. Hello.
Hi.
Question is for affordable housing, because putting in a lot of homes and stuff, how are you addressing fresh water and sewage to those units?
Not sure, we don't provide that, so I don't know.
I was desperately trying to unmute. And so the housing that we're talking about is largely in the urban area that has water and sewer service provided, and both going through our planning projects and at the time of development, the actual providers would assess their systems and ensure that that they are sufficient for whatever is proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, James.
I'll try to find mute faster.
Are there more questions? We don't have any hands. Oh, I spoke too soon. Rick Cook.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate your time tonight again, as usual. And Mike, this is for you, but not only that, I'll give you an update at 6-3 Tampa Bay over the Dodgers currently.
Oh, thank you.
I just received a temporary right of entry permit letter today. And if you could just kind of touch on that real quick, what actually is going to happen at that point, if in fact I give you the permission to come on and drill holes or whatever you do.
You're talking about the Stafford Childs project?
Yes, that's why I got the letter.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly. I can only imagine it's probably something that we're probably getting ready to do surveying. We're really just starting on the project, just hired the consultant. So there might be some kind of geotech work. Rick, I really don't know. I can get back to you on that though.
Okay, well, it says some of that stuff in there, but I'm just curious because it's open for a whole year.
Yeah, that's pretty normal because
okay.
We don't like to get them for a real short period of time because sometimes things get delayed and then we have to come back to you. So it's not that we'd be doing it for a year. I mean, that doesn't happen.
Okay, I was just kind of looking at that and was going, wow, hold on, are you going to build it up? Anyway,
no, that's all that is. It's kind of like a minimum time period.
Good, I appreciate that. And then for Martha, is the House bill going to affect basically the unincorporated or rural areas at all? Or how do you see that affecting them?
So it affects the unincorporated area. Are you talking about House Bill 2001, first of all? Okay.
Yes.
It affects the unincorporated areas inside of the urban growth boundary. So it would not affect anything outside of the urban growth boundary until it's at a point where it's being planned to be brought in and then ultimately brought in.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to be sure. Thank you all.
Thanks, Rick. Brent.
Oh, so can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, this is great for me because I ended up in Newport today having a heart attack because my computer wasn't working. So now I'm on my phone. So I have a question. So the county, so Martha Fritzie, so the county spends quite a bit of money trying to get the affordable housing, you know, kind of worked out. But the question that I really have is there, because it's affordable housing, you know, I watch a lot of TV and you hear slumlords and all this other good stuff, but how is, you know, we can build more houses, but is there a way that they will be in fact affordable?
Not based on the work that we are doing in the zoning code. There are ways to build affordable housing, and the Housing Authority is one of the providers that builds affordable housing in the county. And they use various funding sources and have to guarantee that the rent stays affordable at certain levels as they relate to the area median income for long periods of time. I think it's 30 years for most of them, but I could be wrong. And so we are looking at ways to enable more housing and perhaps incentivize some affordable units to be built, but we cannot make those units be built through the zoning code.
Yeah, it's more like buying down the rents. So the builder goes to the state of Oregon, to Clackamas County, federal folks, and they get money to buy down the costs so they can buy down the rent. And then the rent stays at a certain level for whatever the grant is they got is, you know, like I think Martha's right, 30 years, 50 years, we had a 50-year project. So, and sometimes it might be that the county will own the project in so many years, and sometimes it isn't.
That makes sense. Supply and demand would probably force the rents to come down. I understand that. I'm kind of new at all this stuff, but I do have a lot of questions. Jennifer Hughes, has the planning department, now that and I don't know what the bill was, but they were going to add additional house on timber ground, TBR ground, not unlike the EFU ground for an additional worker. Has the county looked at that, and have they made any decisions on what they were going to do with that yet?
Yes, in fact, it was part of the minor code amendments package that Karen was talking about, where we made some changes to our code to come into line with state law. And the county did opt to include that additional accessory dwelling for I think it's called for family forestry or something along those lines. And yes, it's in our code. It took effect October 1st. It is relatively restrictive, but that, you know, came to us from the state. So there aren't a lot of parcels that will qualify, but there are some. And so if you want to talk about the details, certainly you would want to call the planning department or I can have someone call you if you have a specific question.
Oh, thank you very much. And I have a question for Mike Benzer too. So we were involved in the fires, you know, out in East counties. And I understand, I really, you know, I was involved in a CI meeting just yesterday, just as a bystander at this point, but the debriefing for the fire, I think is very important, especially while the time is at hand. But the county has got a lot of, let's see, work to do just for the runoff. Mike, are you guys able to handle that okay? You know, for the erosion control and that sort of thing. It seems like we're kind of all in the dark yet without having a debriefing at hand.
Well, it's a big topic. I could tell you that our maintenance, when it comes to county roads and public roads, our maintenance crews have been out doing what they can. I know a few areas in particular that were hit bad. They were able to get out and do some hydro seeding and do some work. You know, I I'd have to talk to my maintenance manager to know exactly where they're at with all that, but I know they've been very proactive. And this goes back even just a few weeks ago where we had it, and then we were about to get some heavy rains, and they ran out and hit some of the worst spots where there's some pretty, there were some pretty steep hills, and made sure they could do whatever they can. You know, I mean, we have a lot of miles of roads, but you know, luckily we actually did okay from a county road condition standpoint. The roads did all right. We lost some signs. Our bridges were okay, and so we're able to concentrate a little bit more on the drainage. But you know, our maintenance crews do excellent work. They are on this, and I know that Shane Abbott, who is our transportation maintenance manager, was part of the EOC effort the whole time, and he and I were in constant communication. We still talk every day. And I know that drainage was #1 on his mind already a few weeks ago. So I have no doubt they've made a lot of progress.
So Mike, did they, was the monetary amount of money that was put forth in the, you know, the recovery effort to keep, you know, all the conditions as normal as they could be, was it overwhelming enough that the county could acquire any of the FEMA money that was granted to the governor at this point?
Oh yeah, the county's going to get some FEMA money. A lot of it's going to be debris removal and tree removal. There are thousands of trees that need to be removed. As far as road damage, there just wasn't incredibly much. And Shane and I talked about that a few times, saying, hey, you know, FEMA money those are hard, those are difficult dollars. They come with more strings attached than any federal money I've ever seen, and any federal money comes with strings attached. So we just went out, and frankly, some of the work you're talking about, we just did it. It wasn't very expensive. You know, our staff, that we're paying them anyway. The materials aren't all that much in those cases. So we just went out and did a lot of it. So are we going to recover every cent? No. But for the things that are bigger, yes. And we are working directly with the EOC still, coding all our work the way we need to. I know the county has a very large, we hired a debris removal consultant who helped us. We had arborists looking at trees. So we are in the thick of that effort still. And yes, we will be collecting FEMA money.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Katie, for putting this together. And I can see you all, and I'm glad you can all hear it. Thanks.
Thanks, Brent. So we have time for one more question from Marge.
Okay, it's just a quickie comment back to the discussion about CPO, about inactive CPOs. Could you be looking at some permanent changes of CPO boundaries? One that bothers me quite a bit is between Furwood and Eagle Creek. Brent and I don't fight about it, but there's a long finger that comes down south from Sandy. So those people and Sandy doesn't really have a CPO. So those people are unrepresented. You know, it just seems like it'd be time to make a permanent change of that boundary and decide which way that piece of land would go, because there are people down there who do care and want to come to our meetings. So anyway, just a comment there.
Thanks, Marge. Yes, we will look into all those little odd areas that have popped up with the incorporation of properties and different things like that.
Okay. And thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Marge. Okay, so that's all the time we have for questions. If folks have questions, if you have comments or questions you haven't been able to ask tonight, I do encourage you to send those to me, and I will make sure that we get those responses back to you. I do have a couple updates to give, and given the short amount of time, I'm just going to tell you what they are, and then I will include more detail about them in the email, follow-up email that we send after this meeting. But I wanted you all to know that we've put together a group email for community leaders to use to reach out to PGA. This will help ensure that you get as quick of a response as possible, and to make sure that you get the information you need as quickly as possible. We also have updated the handbook, and that is available online, and I will put more information about that in the follow-up email, how to access it, and also how to get a printed copy if you need that. And then I also just wanted to put a reminder out there to folks, if you want support hosting virtual meetings for your CPOs, please reach out to me. We're happy to help. And I know that that can be a little bit scary at first, but for the groups that are meeting, I think they would tell you that it's not as scary as they thought once they jumped in. So please do let me know if I can help you with your virtual meetings. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. First and foremost, our volunteers out in the community doing the work to keep our community connected. I want to thank our commissioners for taking the time to stick with us tonight. You guys have been putting in long days these last few months. Thank you so much.
It was a long meeting. I grew a beard and a mustache.
And I want to thank our staff for coming and presenting. Thank you so much. I know this makes for a long day, but we're very grateful that you were able to stick with us and share all that important information. So thank you all, and everyone have a wonderful evening. Bye.